I peeped around the leg of the chair and watched the hundreds of witches' feet walking out through the doors of the ballroom. When they had all gone and the place was absolutely silent, I began to move cautiously about on the floor. Suddenly I remembered Bruno. He must surely be somewhere around here, too. Bruno, I called out. I wasn't seriously expecting that I would be able to speak at all now that I had become a mouse. So I got the shock of my life when I heard my own voice, my own perfectly normal, rather loud voice, coming out of my tiny mouth. It was wonderful. I was thrilled. I tried it again. Bruno Jenkins, where are you? I called out. If you can hear me, give a shout. My voice was exactly the same and just as loud as it had been when I was a boy. Hey there, Bruno Jenkins, I called. Where are you? There was no answer. I pottered around between the seat legs, trying to get used to being so close to the ground. I decided I rather liked it. You're probably wondering why I wasn't depressed at all. I found myself thinking, what's so wonderful about being a little boy anyway? Why is that necessarily any better than being a mouse? I know that mice get hunted and they sometimes get poisoned or caught in traps, but little boys sometimes get killed too. Little boys can be run over by motor cars, or they can die from awful illness. Little boys don't have to go to school. Mice don't. Mice don't have to pass exams. Mice don't have to worry about money. Mice, as far as I can see, have only two enemies, humans and cats. My grandmother's a human, but I know for certain that she will always love me wherever I am, and she never, thank goodness, keeps a cat. When mice grow up, they don't ever have to go to war and fight against other mice. Mice, I feel pretty certain, all like each other. People don't. Yes, I told myself. I don't think it is at all a bad thing to be a mouse. I was wandering around the ballroom floor, thinking all about this when I spotted a mouse. It was crouching on the floor, holding a piece of bread in its front paw and nibbling away at it with great gusto. It had to be Bruno. Hello, Bruno, I said. He glanced up at me for about 2 seconds and then went right on guzzling. What have you found? I asked him. When we dropped it, he answered. It's a fish paste sandwich. Pretty good. He too spoke with a perfectly normal voice. One would have expected that a mouse, if it was going to talk at all, would do so with the smallest and squeakiest voice you could imagine. It's particularly funny to hear the voice of the rather loud mouse Bruno coming out of that tiny mouse's throat. Listen, Bruno, I said, now that we are both mice, I think we ought to start thinking a bit about our future. He stopped eating and stared at me with small black eyes. What do you mean, we? He said. The fact that you're a mouse has nothing to do with me. But you're a mouse too, Bruno. Don't be a fool, he said. I'm not a mouse. I'm afraid you are, Bruno. I most certainly am not, he shouted. Why are you insulting me? I haven't been rude to you. Why do you call me a mouse? Don't know what's happened to you? I said. What on earth are you talking about? Bruno said. I have to inform you, I said, that not very long ago the witches turned you into a mouse. Then did it to me. You're lying, he cried. I'm not a mouse. If you haven't been so busy guzzling that sandwich, I said, you would have noticed your hairy paws. Take a look at them. Bruno looked down at his paws. He jumped. Good grief, he cried. I am a mouse. Wait till my father hears about this. He may think it's an improvement, I said. I don't want to be a mouse, Bruno shouted, jumping up and down. I refuse to be a mouse. I'm Bruno Jenkins. There are worse things than being a mouse, I said. You can live in a hole. I don't want to live in a hole, Bruno shouted. And then you can creep into the larder at night, I said, and nibble through all the packets of raisins and cornflakes and chocolate biscuits and everything else you can find. You can stay there all night eating yourself silly. That's what mice do. Now that's a flop, Bruno said, perking up a bit. But how am I going to open the doors of the fridge, get the cold chicken and all leftovers? That's something I do every evening at home. Maybe your rich father will get your little special mouse fridge all to yourself, he said, and that you can open. You say a witch did this to me? Bruno said. Which witch? The one who gave you the chocolate bar in the hotel lobby yesterday, I told him. Don't you remember? The filthy old cow, he shouted. I'll get her for this. Where is she? Who is she? Forget it, I said. We don't have a hope. The biggest problem at the moment is your parents. How are they going to take this? Will they treat you with sympathy and kindness? Bruno considered this for a moment. I think, he said, that my father is going to be a bit put out. And your mother? She's terrified of mice, Bruno said. And you've got a problem, haven't you? Why only me, he said. How about you? My grandmother will understand perfectly, I said. She knows all about witches. Bruno took another bite of his sandwich. What do you suggest? He said. I suggest we both go first at all and consult my grandmother, I said. She knows exactly what to do. I moved towards the doors, which were standing open. Bruno, still grasping part of the sandwich in one paw, followed after me. When we get out into the corridor, I said, we're going to run like mad. Stick close to the wall of the way and follow me. Do not talk and do not let anyone see you. Don't forget that just about anyone who catches sight of you will try to kill you. I snatched the sandwich out of his paws and threw it away. Here goes, I said. Keep behind me. Hello, Grandmama. As soon as I was out of the ballroom, I took off like a flash. I streaked down the corridor, went through the lounge and the reading room and the library and the drawing room and came to the stairs. Up the stairs I went, jumping quite easily from one to the other, keeping well in against the wall all the time. Are you with me, Bruno? I whispered. Right here, he said. My grandmother's room and my own were on the 5th floor. It was quite a climb, but we made it without meeting a single person on the way because everybody was using the lift. On the 5th floor, I raced along the corridor to the door of my grandmother's room. A pair of her shoes were standing outside the door to be cleaned. Bruno was alongside me. What do we do now? He said. Suddenly, I caught sight of a chambermaid coming along the corridor towards us. I saw at once that she was the one who had reported me to the manager of King White Mice. Not, therefore, the sort of person I wanted to meet in my present condition. Quick, I said to Bruno, hide in one of those shoes. I hopped into one shoe and Bruno hopped into the other. I waited for the maid to walk past us. She didn't. When she came to the shoes, she bent down and picked them up. In doing this, she put her hand inside the one I was hiding in. When one of her fingers touched me, I bit it. It was a silly thing to do, but I did it instinctively, without thinking. The maid let out a scream that must have been heard by ships far out in the English Channel, and she dropped the shoes and ran like the wind down the corridor. My grandmother's door opened. What on earth is going on out here? She said. I darted between her legs into the room and Bruno followed. Close the door, Grandmama, I cried. Please hurry. She looked around and saw 2 small brown mice on the carpet. Please close it, I said, and this time she actually saw me talking and recognized my voice. She froze and became absolutely motionless. Every part of her body, her fingers and hands and arms and head, became suddenly as stiff as a marble statue. Her face turned even paler than marble. Her eyes were stretched so wide I could see the whites all around. Then she started to tremble. I thought she was going to faint and fall over. Please close the door quickly, Grandmama, I said. That awful maid might come in. She somehow managed to get herself together enough to close the door. I leaned against it. She leaned against it, staring down at me, white-faced and shaking all over. I saw tears beginning to come out of her eyes and were dribbling down her cheeks. Don't cry, Grandmama, I said. Things could be a lot worse. I did get away from them. I'm still alive. So is Bruno. Very slowly, she bent down and picked me up with one hand. Then she picked Bruno up with the other hand and put us both on the table. There was a bowl of bananas in the center of the table, and Bruno jumped straight into it and began tearing away with his teeth at one of the banana skins to get at the fruit inside. My grandmother grasped the arm of her chair to steady herself, but her eyes never left me. Sit down, dear Grandmama, I said. She collapsed into a chair. Oh, my darling, she murmured, and now the tears were really streaming down her cheeks. Oh, my poor sweet darling, what have they done to you? I know what they've done, Grandmama, and I know what I am. The funny thing is that I don't honestly feel bad about it. I don't even feel angry. In fact, I feel rather good. I know I'm not a boy any longer and I never will be again, but I'll be quite all right as long as there's always you to look after me. I was not just trying to console her. I was being absolutely honest about the way I felt. You may think it odd that I wasn't weeping myself. It was odd. I simply can't explain it. Of course I'll look after you, my grandmother murmured. Who is the other one? That was a boy called Bruno Jenkins, I told her. They got him first. My grandmother took a new long black cigar out of a case in her handbag and stuck it in her mouth. Then she got a box of matches. She struck a flame, but her fingers were shaking so much that the flame kept missing the end of her cigar. When she got it lit at last, she took a long pole and sucked in smoke. That seemed to calm her a bit. What did happen? She whispered. Where's the witch now? Is she in the hotel? Grandmama, I said. It wasn't just one. It was hundreds. They're all over the place. They're right here in the hotel this very moment. She leaned forward and stared at me. You don't actually mean. You don't mean to tell me they're holding the annual meeting right here in the hotel? You have to, Grandmama. It's finished. I heard it all. And all of them, including the Grand High Witch herself, are downstairs now. They're pretending they're the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. They're having tea with the manager. And they caught you? They smelled me out, I said. Dog's droppings, wasn't it? She said, sighing. I'm afraid so, but it wasn't strong. They very nearly didn't smell me because I hadn't had a bath for ages. Children should never have baths, my grandmother said. It's a dangerous habit. I agree, Grandmama. She paused, sucking her cigar. Do you really mean to tell me that they are all downstairs having tea? She said. I'm certain of it, Grandmama. There was another pause. I could see the old glint of excitement slowly coming back into my grandmother's eyes. And all of a sudden, she sat up very straight in her chair and said sharply, Tell me everything right from the beginning, and please hurry. I took a deep breath and began to talk. I told about going to the ballroom and hiding behind the screen to do my mouse training. I told about the notice saying Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I told her all about the woman coming in and sitting down, and about the small woman who appeared on the stage and took off her mask. But when it came to describing what her face looked like underneath his mask, I simply couldn't find the right words. It was horrible, Grandmama, I said. Oh, it was so horrible. It was like something that was going rotten. Go on, my grandma said. Don't stop. Then I told her about all the others taking off their wigs and their gloves and their shoes, and how I saw before me a sea of bald pimply heads, and how the women's fingers had little claws, and how their feet had no toes. My grandmother had come forward now, in her armchair so that she was sitting right on the edge of it. Both her hands were cupped over the gold knob of a stick that she always used when walking, and she was staring at me with eyes as bright as 2 stars. Then I told her about how the Grand High Witch had shot out the fiery white-hot sparks, and how they had turned one of the other witches into a puff of smoke. I'd heard about that, my grandmother cried out excitedly, but I never quite believed it. You're the first non-witch to see it happening. It is the Grand High Witch's most famous punishment. It is known as getting fried, and all the other witches are petrified of having it done to them. I'm told that the Grand High Witch makes it a rule to fry at least one witch at each annual meeting. She does it in order to keep the rest of them on their toes. But I don't have any toes, Grandmama. I know they don't, darling, but please go on. So when I told my grandmother about the delayed action mouse maker, and when I came to the bit about turning all the children of England into mice, she actually leapt out of her chair shouting, I knew it! I knew they were brewing up something tremendous. We've got to stop them, I said. She turned and stared at me. You can't stop witches, she said. Just look at the power that the terrible Grand High Witch has in her eyes alone. She could kill any of us at any time with those white-hot sparks of hers. You saw it yourself. Even so, Grandma, we still got to stop her from turning all the children of England into mice. You haven't quite finished, she said. Tell me about Bruno. How did they get him? So I described how Bruno Jenkins had come in, how I had actually seen him with my own eyes being shrunk into a mouse. My grandmother looked at Bruno, who was guzzling away in the bowl of bananas. Does he never stop eating? She asked. Never, I said. Can you explain something to me, Grandmama? I'll try, she said. She reached out and lifted me off the table and put me on her lap. Very gently, she began stroking the soft fur on my back. It felt nice. What is it that you want to ask me, my darling? She said. The thing that I don't understand, I said, is how Bruno and I are still able to talk and think as we did before. It's quite simple, my grandmother said. All they've done to you is to shrink you and give you 4 legs and a furry coat. But they haven't been able to change you into a 100% mouse. You are still yourself in everything except your appearance. You still got your own mind and your own brain and your own voice. And thank goodness for that. So I'm not really an ordinary mouse at all, I said. I'm sort of a mouse person. Quite right, she said. You are a human in mouse's clothing. You are very special. We sat there in silence for a few moments while my grandmother went on stroking me very gently with one finger and puffing her cigarette with the other hand. The only sound in the room was made by Bruno as he attacked the bananas in the bowl. But I wasn't doing nothing as I lay there on her lap. I was thinking like mad. My brain was whizzing as it had never whizzed before. Grandmama, I said, I may have a bit of an idea. Yes, my darling, what is it? The grandhand witch told them her room was number 454, right? Right, she said. Well, my room is number 554. Mine, 554, is on the 5th floor, so hers, 454, would be on the 4th floor. That is correct, my grandmother said. And don't you think it's possible that room 454 is directly underneath room 554? That's more than likely, she said. These modern hotels are built like boxes of bricks. But what is it? Will you please take me out onto my balcony so I can look down? I said. All the rooms in the Hotel Magnificent had small private balconies. My grandmother carried me through into my own bedroom and out onto my balcony. We both peered down to the balcony immediately below. Now, if that is her room, I said, then I'll bet I could climb down there somehow and get it. And get caught all over again, my grandmother said. I won't allow it. At this moment, I said, all the witches are down on the Sunshine Terrace having tea with the manager. The Grand High Witch probably won't be back until 6 o'clock or just before. That's when she's going to dish her supplies of the foul formula to the ancient ones, who are too old to climb trees after Gruntle's eggs. And what if you did manage to get into her room? My grandmother said. What then? Then I should try to find a place where she keeps her supply of the action mouse maker. And if I succeed, then I would steal 1 bottle of it and bring it back here. Can you carry it? I think so, I said. It's a very small bottle. I'm frightened of that stuff, my grandmother said. What would you do with it if you did manage to get it? 1 bottle is enough for 500 people, I said. That would give each and every witch down there a double dose at least. We could turn them all into mice. My grandmother jumped about an inch in the air. We were out on my balcony. There was a drop of about 1,000,000 feet below us, and I very nearly bounced out of her hand over the railings where she jumped. Be careful with me, Grandmama, I said. What an idea, she cried. It's fantastic. It's tremendous. You're a genius, my darling. Wouldn't it be something, I said. Wouldn't that really be something? We get rid of every witch in England in 1 swoop, she cried, and the Grand High Witch into the bargain. We've got to try it, I said. Listen, she said, nearly dropping me over the balcony once again in her whole excitement. If we bought this off, it would be the greatest triumph in the whole history of witchery. There's a lot of work to do, I said. Of course there's a lot of work to do, she said. Just for a start, supposing you didn't manage to get hold of 1 of those bottles, how would you get into their food? We'll work that out later, I said. Let's try to get the stuff first. How can we find out for sure if that's her room just below us. We shall check it out immediately, my grandmother cried. Come along, there's not a second to waste. Carrying me in one hand, she went bustling out of the bedroom and along the corridor, banging her stick on the carpet with each step she took. We went down the stairs, one flight to the 4th floor. The bedrooms on either side of the corridor had numbers painted on the doors in gold. Here it is, my grandmother cried. Number 454. She tried the door. It was locked, of course. She looked up and down the long, empty hotel corridor. I do believe you're right, she said. This room is most certainly directly below yours. She marched back along the corridor, counting the number of doors from the Grand High Witch's door to the staircase. There were 6. She climbed back up to the 5th floor and repeated the exercise. She is directly below you, my grandmother cried out. Her room is right below yours. She carried me back into my own bedroom and went out once again onto the balcony. That's the balcony down there, she said. And what's more, the door from her balcony into her bedroom is wide open. How are you going to climb down? I don't know, I said. Our rooms were in the front of the hotel, and they looked down onto the beach and the sea. Immediately below my balcony, thousands of feet below, I could see a fence of spiked railings. If I fell, I'd be a goner. I've got it, my grandmother cried. With me in her hand, she rushed back into her own room and began rummaging in the chest of drawers. She came out with a ball of blue knitting wool. One end of it was attached to some needles and a half-finished sock she must have been knitting for me. This is perfect, she said. I shall put you in the sock and lower you down onto the Grand High Witch's balcony. But we must hurry. Any moment now, that monster will be returning to her room. And that's all for now.